Welcome to Family Law Talk, presented by Kirk Stange of Stange Law Firm, PC. Stange Law Firm is a family law firm in the St. Louis metro area with offices in Missouri and Illinois. Now, here's your host, Kirk Stange.
Welcome to Family Law Talk. My name is Kirk Stange, and I am one of the managing partners of Stange Law Firm, PC, which is a family law firm in the St. Louis metro area. We have offices in Missouri, and we have offices in Illinois. Well, welcome to tonight's podcast on Stange Law Firm. Again, the topic here tonight is settling your family law case when a settlement proposal is in the margin of error. It's a really interesting topic. It's actually based on an article that I wrote myself on a webpage called hg.org. And if you look under the link tonight to the podcast, you can get a link to the article, and you can read it as a follow-up or a prelude to the episode here this evening. Very interesting topic, one that kind of a hook or catchphrase, if you will, that I've been using for a long time to try to break this whole concept down with clients. But we'll get into that topic here in a minute. But before we do that, I should state, as I always do, that the choice of a lawyer is an important decision that should not be based solely upon advertisements, and that the information you obtain tonight in this episode is general in nature, and it may not apply to specific factual or legal circumstance. Therefore, if you require legal advice, you should definitely consult an attorney who is licensed and competent to practice law in your specific jurisdiction. All right, so on to the topic. Again, this is based on an article that I wrote that's on a webpage called hg.org, and you can read that after the episode here today, and it will, in a lot of ways break it down in a little different light than the way I'll break it down here tonight, but definitely an interesting article. And again, this goes back to a critical question that I think any family law attorney gets, and I can tell you one that I get all the time from clients and have throughout my career, which is, along the lines of, Kirk, when do you think I ought to settle my case? When does it make sense to proceed forward? And when does it make sense to go to trial in a case versus, on the other hand, when do you think it's appropriate to settle the case and wrap it up and just get it over with? And, that's a critical question that really any client going through a family law case is going to ponder, and it makes perfect sense. And as an attorney, in a lot of ways, it can be easier to pull the emotion back and dial it back and look at a client's case in kind of an objective way, and that makes it easier as an attorney to advise a client. Of course, when you're a client and you're going through a family law case, it could be a difficult quandary in that you've got emotions tied up into it. And this isn't just a case. You're not just looking at data and numbers and assets. I mean, this is your life. And, for clients, that can be a very scary thing. And I think as an attorney, I'm cognizant of that. And that's what humbles me every day in working in this profession, because I know I'm dealing with real lives, with real kids. And I know the effects of these cases can affect families, really for the rest of their life. And that's what is terribly humbling about this profession, and why it's such a great honor to be able to help clients through very difficult times in their family law case. But, again, the specific question I get from clients is, when should I settle? When does it make sense to settle? Or on the other hand, when does it make sense to proceed forward and perhaps go to trial? And that's the question. And again, let me kind of break this down for you and the listeners out there. So, maybe this will make sense. And, obviously, what I'm talking about here today is kind of a general principle. We all know kind of general principles in life. There's kind of catchphrases and hooks, for things that, that people use based on, just kind of words of wisdom, maybe from philosophers and stuff like that people consider. But for me, something I've kind of kept in my hip pocket, and something I always say to clients is look, what's critical is where will this case end up if the case went to trial, in all likelihood. And I refer to that as kind of the margin of error. This is there could be some variant, but when you look at the big issues in the case, oftentimes, I mean, as an attorney, if you've handled lots of cases and you're familiar with the court system and maybe you're familiar with the judges, you don't know with 100% certainty what they might do, but you can kind of come up with a range. What I try to do with clients and say is something like this. I mean, let's look at the best case scenario. I mean, if everything just kind of rolls your way, if you have the absolute best day in court and the judge looks at your situation and is kind of favorable to your position, you know, what's that best possible case in terms of how a case could end up? And then I think with any client, as an attorney, you've got to advise a client, you know, if things don't go your way, if the judge has a negative impression in terms of your version of the facts or your side of the case, what's that worst case scenario? In other words, what's the absolute worst thing that could happen? And so, you know, in taking that worst possible case and you take the best possible case, what I try to do with clients is then kind of come to that middle point and say, what's the middle between the best and the worst? And that's what I refer to when I say a margin of error. That's kind of that center point where you think, you know, most people don't have the absolute best day in court and everything doesn't go 100% their way. I mean, sometimes it does, but for most folks, you know, it can be an ebb and flow. There can be good and bad if you go to trial. So, you know, you take that middle. And again, that's what I kind of call the margin of error. And to use an analogy, you know, oftentimes in elections, for example, you'll see polls in terms of, you know, where the voter's mind might be. And any poll has a plus or minus. And so poll might say, you know, 45% for this candidate and 55% for this candidate, but this poll is plus or minus 2 or plus or minus 3. And so that's where you know the variant can be. And so the poll, you know, is a snapshot in a moment of time, but the overall election result can vary a little bit. It can move a little bit in one direction, it can move a little bit in the other direction. And that's what they call in polling is the margin of error. And so what I tell clients is, look, find that middle between the best and the worst case. And that in all likelihood is where a case is likely to end up. And then you know there's a plus or minus where it could move a little bit this way, it could move a little bit that way, and so there can be some variant there, and that's that margin of error. And so what I tell clients is look, if you get an offer and that settlement offer is such that you know if you go to trial, the reality is you're probably going to get a better result because that margin of error is someplace different. So you got a settlement offer coming your way, but the offer is such that if you go to trial, you proceed forward, you end up with a substantially better result or a significantly better result. In those cases, it typically doesn't make sense to settle. In other words, why would you settle if by proceeding forward you can obtain a result that is going to be better for you? And when I say better, I mean you're looking a year down the line, 5 years down the line, 10 years down the line. I think you have to take a short-term view of a settlement offer, and then you have to break it down to the long term and say what would the long-term effects be. So in those cases, typically it doesn't make sense to settle because proceeding forward is likely to net a better result when you look at that margin of error. On the flip end, sometimes it happens in cases. You get a settlement offer, and it's just fantastic from the other side. Doesn't always happen. Sometimes, you know, in fact, the other, I think, possibility is more true that you get a result. You get an offer that is maybe unreasonable and that, you know, you could do better if you went to court. But every now and again, maybe you get an offer and it's just fantastic. And you know, if you went to court, that the reality is that it's likely that you could end up worse. Well, obviously, in those cases, you want to take that settlement offer, and you probably want to take it and run for the hills before the other side changes their mind. Again, it doesn't happen that often, but in those cases, it's easy to know that settlement makes sense. The trick, though, is what oftentimes happen is, you know, there's offers. So you get a settlement offer, you do a counter offer, maybe you go to court, get some insight from the judge. If there's a guardian ad litem in a custody case, you get some insight from that guardian ad litem. And these settlement offers, you know, you can have offers and counter offers, and then both parties are moving a little bit, and they come together. And what I normally tell clients is, look, if the settlement offers get to a point to where it's in that margin of error, in other words, you're kind of in that halfway point between your best case scenario, if everything goes your way in court, or your worst case scenario, if everything just falls against you in court. So if you're kind of halfway in between that, in that margin of error where you're in between your best and your worst day, and perhaps you take the case to court, and maybe you do a smidge better on some issues, but maybe you do a smidge worse on some other issues. Those are the cases where I think it's tough for client, but those are the cases where, practically speaking, why prolong a case maybe for months, spend significantly more in attorney fees if the result is in that margin of error. Those are the cases where I normally tell clients which is, look, it's your decision, it's your choice. You've got a right to decide whether to take the settlement offer or not. And, of course, it's your decision. You've got to live with the results of it. I don't. I'm going to live my life at the conclusion of this case, and you're going to live yours, and so you're going to have to live with this result, not me. And so it's your decision. But, practically speaking, why spend significantly more in attorney fees, emotional heartache in terms of a case like this, prolonging, continuing forward if the result isn't going to be substantially better. So, again, there's not necessarily a black or white rule, but as kind of a general principle, I would tell the folks out there that, again, every case comes down to the specifics of your specific situation, but if settlement offers get to a point to where it's in that margin of error, that's usually the point where settlement might be warranted. Certainly something you should significantly think about and consider, because proceeding forward might just be costly and it might not change the result much. Of course, is kind of the opposite side of this. What you really need is a family law attorney that practices in this area. Somebody who knows the ins and outs of it, that has dealt with the judges in multiple cases of a similar fashion in the past, and that can help determine what that margin of error is, and that's really a critical thing. And obviously, if you have a newer judge, maybe somebody you're not familiar with, this margin of error can be harder to predict, because a newer judge where the attorneys have had less experience with the judge, it can just be harder to predict what might happen in terms of what that judge might do. But again, as a general principle, settling a family law case when a settlement proposal is in the margin of error makes sense in a lot of instances, and it's definitely something I would say the listeners should take a hard, long look at if they get a settlement offer in that margin of error in their family law case. So that's the topic. Again, is a follow-up to the episode here today. You can go to hg.org. You can look at the article, Settling Your Family Law Case When a Settlement Proposal is in the Margin of Error. I think it's an interesting article, one I enjoyed putting together immensely myself, because it's kind of this catchphrase I've been using with clients for a long time. So hopefully it's helpful to listeners out there. Again, thanks for listening to Family Law Talk with Stange Law Firm. Stay tuned for our next exciting episode coming up. Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening to Family Law Talk with Kirk Stange. Visit StangeLawFirm.com for more about today's topic, or to put Stange Law Firm to work for your family today.
Thanks for calling Discover. This is Anjali.
Hi, it's Jennifer Coolidge. I just got an alert for a strange charge on my card.
No problem. We make sure you're never held responsible for unauthorized purchases on your Discover card. Let's see. Did you purchase something from a t-shirt cannon store yesterday?
Absolutely not. No, I already have like 3.
$0 fraud liability guarantee. It pays to Discover. Learn more at discover.com/creditcard. Limitations apply.
Hello, it is Ryan, and I was on a flight the other day playing one of my favorite social spin slot games on ChumbaCasino.com. I looked over at the person sitting next to me, and you know what they were doing? They were also playing Chumba Casino. Coincidence? I think not. Everybody's loving having fun with it. Chumba Casino is home to hundreds of casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere, even at 30,000 feet. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com to claim your free welcome bonus. That's ChumbaCasino.com and live the Chumba life.
No purchase necessary. VGW. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.